So hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we would try something a little bit new, a little bit crazy. I thought, since I enjoy watching Sims 4 challenges so much, I thought I would try my own version of a challenge in World of Warcraft. And I made Mr. Generic Everyman Paladin. And his goal in life, obviously, like every male paladin, is to maybe meet a beautiful blood elf woman. But until he can do that, he's going to go and do a little bit of Hallow's End. And we're going to see just how many levels you can get from just doing Hallow's End activities. Now, I started off with him at level 1, and I quickly realized that you have to be level 10 to actually do dailies or trick-or-treating, but you were able to do the very first mystery. And that first mystery is a doozy. You have to track down a courier, you have to follow spiders, you have to converse with a very suspicious auctioneer, before going to the Shady Lady all the way in the Dwarven district and figuring out what is going on with this archaeology student. He sends you off to go intercept a very suspicious shipment, and you go down into the Stormwind Cathedral all the way to the bottom. You intercept this shipment, and voila, we've already leveled up a couple times. Not too bad, you know? You had to do a little bit of picking flowers, a little bit of searching, some more spiders showed up, all of the gang members were dead, but in the end, Mr. Generic Everyman Paladin was able to vanquish his foe and turn the box back into the archaeology student, thinking that that was what he should do. Turns out the archaeology student was crooked, and everybody kind of got their just rewards. And out of that whole thing, you end up with a creepy crate, which was pretty awesome. After that, I was like, well, you know what? I got the candy quest, so let's go do a little bit of chicken clucking, choo-choo train, you know, a little bit of flexing. And then I remembered that heirlooms are a thing and they might help me level up too. So I put on my heirlooms, headed back, and I was headed to Darnassus when disaster struck. I had to get up to level 10, so I quickly leveled up to level 10. And Mr. Generic Everyman is now level 10 and able to participate in all of the Hallow's End festivities. He went, he stink bombed the Undercity. When he was done stink bombing the Undercity, he of course went back and cleaned up Stormwind, which was great fun. And then after doing that, well, darn it, what else are you going to do after you clean up a city and bomb a different city? You're going to go trick-or-treating. Well, after you learn to fight a few fires. Now, unfortunately, I was playing on a very, very dead realm, and there was nobody to actually help fight the fires, so I decided to just go trick-or-treating, and we headed to Westfall. We got turned into a ninja. It was great fun. Then it was on to Duskwood, which only has one trick-or-treating spot, but darn it, it was a lot of fun to get to. And then I decided that we should go check out the Swamp of Sorrows. So we went through Dead Man's Pass, located the Swamp of Sorrows, and there we go. Still a ninja. Now we went on to the Blasted Lands, and we had to have a little chat with Zadormi to get it turned back into the past so we could actually trick-or-treat here. But we were able to get that done. We did our little bit of trick-or-treating. We even ate so much candy that we got the Out With It achievement. and then it was on to Surwich, which is probably my favorite little WoW town. I also was trying really hard not to do any fighting because I really wanted for this experiment to see how many levels you can actually get just from trick-or-treating and Halloween activities. Alright, back to the Swamp of Sorrows, and as you can tell, not fighting is, well, it's a good way to almost die. But that's alright, we made it to Bog Paddle. We got our trick-or-treating done, and we flew back to Elwyn Forest so that we could head out to Redridge and check out what was going on in Lakeshire. Not a whole heck of a lot was going on in Lakeshire, although it did sound like there was a fight club going on in the basement, but that's okay. Now, this gauntlet is not as hard as it used to be, but still pretty darned interesting to get through when you're trying to just get candy. And then I found out that there was no place to trick-or-treat there, so we had to go through the mountain. Off to Searing Gorge we went, and a lot of very bad creatures, but we made it. We made it up here to the Iron Summit. We got our candy, and we were back off chugging right along. And, you know, doing pretty good on this whole leveling thing. I mean, considering we started off at a level 10 when we started trick-or-treating. So we made it to Theslamar and got our candy, and then it was just off to the Farstrider's Lodge, where I'm sure Mr. Everyman was probably hoping for a lovely blood elf lass, but instead it was just some gnomes, couple night elves, mostly dudes. He was a little bit disappointed. That's okay though, because now it is on to the wetlands. And you know, it became less and less about the people you see along the way and more about that candy. You gotta get that candy. No matter who stands in your way. We got shot at a few times there in the Green Warden's Grove, but that didn't stop us from heading to Menethil Harbor. Into the hotel we went as a Nerubian, which was interesting. And we got the candy, and then we just had to get to the Swift Gear station. Had to fight our way through some murlocs, and now we're wearing a skeleton costume. Because of course we are. Crossing the Thandol span and checking in with Zadormi, who did not have to change time for us this time. It was on to Refugee Point before we headed off to the hinterlands at level 13. Woohoo! Mr. Generic does enjoy that leveling up. Now, once we were in the hinterlands, we had 2 candy buckets to locate. The first one we went to was here in the east side of the hinterlands, and then we had to go all the way back across to the west. How I managed to forget my east from my west, I don't know, but I did it pretty good. And then up through the hidden passage going into the western Plaguelands. Now, being a paladin, we did have a quick stop at Uther's tomb to pay our respects, and then it was back to business as usual and looking for that candy. Surprisingly, there is not a candy bucket in Anderhole, so we just had to move on to the Eastern Plaguelands, where there is 1 candy bucket, and that is at Light's Hope Chapel, which was quite the adventure to get to. But we did make it eventually, which I was very pleased about. And then it was just time for a quick flight back so that we could renew our Wickerman buff and head on out yet again back to the Swamp of Sorrows, trying to figure out how to get to those last couple places that I had not already gotten to. It took me a while to figure out how to get into the Badlands without flying, but eventually I did. I really do enjoy doing the trick-or-treating. I'm not sure that I would recommend this as your primary leveling, but you know, as a supplement it works really good. As a primary leveling source, well, I just hit level 14 and I'm almost done trick-or-treating throughout the Eastern Kingdoms. Just have a couple more things to do. Gonna take a quick flight back to Stormwind, a quick tram ride over to Ironforge, and then all we'll have left is Stranglethorn. So, really quick tram ride. We were having a good old time. It was almost time to turn back and get rid of our costume. There we go. Trick or treat, smell my feet. Please give me some good candy because I need to eat. Is what Mr. Generic probably was thinking the entire time because I had him running all over. Now he's a lovely, lovely banshee, but only for a few minutes because that seems to be the costume that breaks the easiest. I didn't even take it off. Alright, we got 2 more candy buckets here. We trick or treat at Fort Livingston, and then it's on to Booty Bay. Passing the Gurabashi Arena and not climbing into it for a fight. We made it to Booty Bay. We got our tricks and treats of the Eastern Kingdoms, and then it's time to head back to Stormwind and do it all over again on a different continent. With a really quick and easy portal now over to Darnassus, where we can finally get the last candy for that darling child who wanted us to trick-or-treat for him. So we're just going to have a little bit of a dance here with the innkeeper. It's always good to watch that male human dance, and then it's back to trick-or-treating. This time as a gnome. Now, I had to make a few decisions, and the biggest decision I had to make was how exactly I was going to go about doing Kalimdor. And I decided to do a big old circle, so I headed over to Darkshore, got my treats there, and then headed south, heading for Astronar. Also, I don't know if it's been said before, but Darkshore is a very, 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 very long zone. But we finally did make it to Astronar, and that was wonderful. Then we just had to wind our way back up and try to make it back up into Fellwood, where we had 2, count 'em, 2 exciting candy buckets to find. First one was here at Whisperwind Grove. One of my favorite places just because I love the squirrel washing quest. It makes me laugh every time I do it. But after that, we had to go find the reclusive Worgen druids who are up here in this tree. They're hiding a candy bucket, but you can't hide it from a Nerubian. Then we just had to make our way through the Timbermaw Tunnel out into Winter Springs so that we could get some candy from Everlook, and then hop another quick flight back down to Astronar so that we could finish our big ol' loop. But before we can do that, I actually remembered that the Exodore existed. So we had to go get the 3 candy buckets that are locked back there in Burning Crusade time. So we got the one at the Exodore and then went ahead and did Blood Watch to be followed by Azure Watch. I always forget that the Exodore actually is a thing, which is sad because I actually really like it. It's a very cool place. But they don't have you doing much there except a little bit of trick-or-treating. Unfortunately, they don't even have their own special candy. Oh well. Maybe that'll happen if Blizzard actually does the world revamp. That would be kind of fun. So back on through, we're gonna head back to Stormwind really quick, renew our Wicker Man buff, turn in the candy to our darling kid, and back to and level 16. I don't even know when I missed level 15, but it's now level 16. Now, Stone Talon is a very difficult area to trick or treat if you can't fly. I don't think I've ever done the trick-or-treating event without being able to fly. In fact, usually I use my Sands of Time and turn myself into a dragon to take lower level people out trick-or-treating, which levels them quickly and is much faster than doing it this way. But this was the way I decided to do it, just to see what the challenge would be, and now I'm a leper gnome. Gotta love that. Now, Fort Triumph, I think it is, this last trick-or-treating area in Stone Talon Mountains was the biggest pain in the rear end. I ended up getting flagged for PvP briefly, but eventually I did make it. Oh, it's not Fort Triumph, it was North Watch Hold. I think Fort Triumph was also a little bit of a pain in my rear. But that's okay, we are done with Stone Talon and on to the Southern Barrens. The first one was actually pretty easy. We finished getting that candy bucket and then just had to figure out how to do the rest by climbing our way through the overgrowth, being attacked by everything in sight, and finally making it all the way over here to... Is this Fort Triumph? I don't even know if it's Fort Triumph anymore. I just know after I finished that, it was time to go for a really quick swim so that we could pick up Ratchet's candy bucket. Once we had that, it was just a really quick swim, well, actually flight, back to where we just were, because I didn't feel like swimming again. I knew there was water in the forecast eventually. Down through the fields of blood and on to our very last one, which is finally Fort Triumph. I knew I got there eventually. And then off we go to not Theramore, which is another place that does not have a candy bucket. Now it is time to head on over to Mud Sprocket and level 17. Huzzah! Once we finished with that, it was off to Thousand Needles, which doesn't have any candy buckets, so it's off to swim again. Climbing through and over to Gadget Zon for their candy bucket, and then a long trek across the desert to the Bootlegger Outpost, where we have yet another candy bucket. You guessed it. Had to fight our way through some tornadoes, poisonous snakes, but we finally made it. Then back out into our desert trekking so that we could make it to the jungle and Ongoro Crater. We were getting closer and closer all the time. I just kept watching that achievement list shrink. Ongoro Crater was a little bit fun because everything there wants to kill you, but we did finally make it to Marshall's Stand, got that candy bucket, and now it's on to Silithus. Once we got to Silithus, we had to have a little chat with Zadormi yet again. It's a good thing she's everywhere, because there are enough places now that are out of step with time that we really need her, especially if we're going to do some trick-or-treating at the Cenarian Hold. Now, I only had 4 candy buckets left, and I had to figure out the best way to get to them. Ridiculously enough, the best way was to head back to the Southern Barrens and do a little bit more swimming. So we swam our way into Feralis, climbed our way up, and then just had to fight our way over to the Feathermoon stronghold, trying really desperately not to get too lost, because Feralis is another place I don't spend nearly as much time as I should. Finally made it over here to the Feathermoon stronghold, and the return of one of our favorite costumes, the Banshee, before heading off to Dreamer's Rest, and we are almost done. I am so excited. Made it over to Dreamer's Rest, got our candy bucket, and now all that's left is going to visit some more of the Cenarian Circle and then off to Nigel's Point, which honestly, Nigel's Point and level 18 was the hardest of the trick-or-treating, only because I could not figure out for the longest time how to get up there without flying. I finally did figure it out, obviously. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done this video. I would still be wandering around out there wondering where Nigel was pointing. But we finally figured it out. Almost killed us, but that's okay, because there we are at Nigel's Point. We have the tricks and the treats of Kalimdor. We did it. Woohoo! Level 18. Now, can you get more levels? Probably, but I wanted to see what we could do just in the old world. And as you can see, Mr. Generic is quite pleased with himself. He's doing his little happy dance. Let me know if you enjoyed this. If you have, maybe Mr. Generic will return again for the Day of the Dead and Bounty's End? Pilgrim's Bounty. Woo, good job. Christine knows her holidays. So yeah, thanks for watching.